Good evening. My name is Kelly Ottern. I'm the Dean of the School of Continuing Studies here at Georgetown University. Cardinal McCarrick, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to our school. To John and Caitlin with the Initiative on Catholic Social Thought and Public Life, we are so honored to host our third event with you. I'm very pleased that all of you have joined us this evening for this important discussion about what Pope Francis's papacy means for young Latino leaders. Before we get into tonight's discussion, I'd like to say a few words about why we're so excited to host the Initiative on Catholic Thought and Public Life at our downtown campus this evening. We often talk about the mission of a Jesuit university, and specifically how the School of Continuing Studies can best serve that mission. To me, it's very clear that the tenets of a Jesuit institution are consistent with the goals of professional education. We offer applied, practice-based educational programs that enable our students to transfer what they learn in the classroom directly to the workplace. We seek to equip them with the tools they need to make an impact and service to their communities. We also aim to expand educational opportunities to students at different stages in their lives and careers. These individuals are often referred to as non-traditional students, though in reality they comprise the majority of students in higher education today. I'd like to remind you that St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Society of Jesus, would be considered a non-traditional student. He studied at the University of Paris for over 7 years and graduated with a master's degree at age 43. As did St. Ignatius, our students strongly believe in the value of higher education, and I'm continually inspired by their ability to balance family commitments, careers, and classwork. You're all in for a very exciting evening. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jose Pulido, who will offer an opening prayer. Jose was born in Bogota, Colombia, and moved to Queens, New York City, where he found his faith in the Catholic Church. He then attended the George Washington University and received his degree in International Affairs and Economics. He currently works as a researcher specializing in how the Latin American macroeconomic, security, and political environment impacts commerce with Asia. I'd like to now invite to the podium Jose Pulido.
Good evening, everyone. I actually won't be offering the opening prayer, but I will start just giving a brief overview of our initiative. So our initiative is called the Catholic Latino Leadership Initiative. And our goal is to make sure that the Latinos in Washington have the ability to experience and to get a chance to learn about Catholic ethics and social justice. The main reason we do this is because, well, DC is just a hub for Latin Americans coming from all over the US and from Latin America to improve their understandings of economics, security, politics. But unfortunately, they don't often take the time to learn about ethics or social justice. So that's why we need to do this, so that when they go back to all over Latin America, whether it's Colombia, Brazil, or Texas, that they have the ethical tools that they need to be able to assess the issues in their countries or states to better serve their communities. The way we intend of doing this is by enforcing 3 pillars. The first one is prayer. Prayer is fundamental because we need to have a good relationship with God to be able to then have a good relationship with our fellow man. The second is education. We need to educate ourselves, inform our consciences. Like Pope Francis said, we need good leaders with mature consciences to be able to tackle these issues. And then finally, action. Now, I like philosophy, and it's very theoretical. But we have real problems, and we need to solve them in a real way. We need to delve deeply and figure out how we can apply "thou shalt not steal" to really benefit the poor. And the church is rich in that. If you actually flip through the catechism and look up "thou shalt not steal," there's a little clause saying you should not have unstable currencies because a high inflation rate will impact the poor disproportionately. This is something that not many people know about, and we need to spread that. The other part of action is that we have a lot of incredibly talented people incredibly talented Latin Americans that are not using their skills, are not being encouraged to engage them with churches in their neighborhoods or with the needy. So, for instance, one of our executive committee members has a PhD in economics from the University of Chicago. Very smart guy, and we love it when he goes to soup kitchens and serves the poor. But he really needs to be on a church's financial committee. He really needs to be on an NGO's financial committee. If you're a PR expert, you should really help your church and organization improve their public relations, etc. And so we are providing a forum where we can connect people, share their talents, and then they can create positive solutions for their communities. That being said, I would like to introduce a fellow executive committee member, Adria Vargas, who will lead our opening prayer. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here with us. I would like us to invite you to pray with me and to have this event blessed from the beginning, starting good, as we say in our executive committee meetings, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Guided by the Holy Spirit and our beloved Mother, the Virgin Mary, I would like us to start this evening entrusting ourselves and this special opportunity to our Lord Jesus Christ, so that he may lead our thoughts, conversations, and guide us with wisdom that we will need to share and learn from each other as we launch this new initiative program for Latino leaders. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, amen. In the name of the Father and the Son.
Cardinal? Good evening. My name is John Carr, and I'm director of the Initiative on Catholic Social Thought and Public Life. I say we had a contest for the most boring name, and that won. But it is a good description of what we're trying to do, which is make the connections that Jose was talking about between what we believe, what the church teaches about life and dignity, about solidarity, with the work that we do every day in our daily lives, in our family lives, but also in our public lives. And as a part of that, we do several things. We have a series of forums. Some of you have been a part of that. Thank you for being there. We're doing a summit of Catholics and evangelicals to overcome poverty, and I hope some of you will be a part of that. But a particular focus of our effort has been to reach out to young people in Washington to try and share with them the rich heritage of Catholic social thought and remind them that their faith can be an asset, can be a guide to the work they do on Capitol Hill or at the World Bank or in the White House or at the Justice Department or the IDB or wherever. And we have had a couple sessions. I know a number of you have been a part of that. We're very grateful to the Dean for the warm welcome we've had here. But Jose and a group of folks came to us and said, this is all terrific. We want to be a part of this. But we think young Latino leaders in Washington have particular needs and can make a particular contribution. And those of you who know Jose know that pretty soon you end up working for him. The people on the executive committee know that, Caitlin and I. He's a wonderful leader. Maybe we'll get him to share his skills. But we are just delighted to be a part of this first gathering for young Latino leaders. Obviously, I'm not young. I'm not Latino. So I'm the perfect one to lead this conversation, I think. Cardinal McCarrick, I think.
Very young.
Yeah. Cardinal McCarrick actually is the perfect person to lead us in this discussion on what a pope from Latin America means for young Latino leaders. Cardinal McCarrick is many things. He's obviously been Archbishop of Washington. He's been Archbishop of Newark. He's been an auxiliary bishop and a priest in New York City. He has been a leader of the Bishops' Conference, which is where I got to know him. And a couple things you may not know about him is, one, he was president of the University of Puerto Rico, Catholic University of Puerto Rico. And two, he told me once, he was appointed to some commission by the Holy Father to work on Africa. And he has done wonderful work on the Holy Land, trying to bring peace and justice to that. But he said, you know, my real love is Latin America. So this is a pastor, a teacher, a leader who has brought his love of Latin America to bear on his work as an archbishop, as a leader of the conference. You could go on and on about his formal ties. I just want to tell you two quick stories about the Cardinal, and then I get to ask him lots of embarrassing questions. The Cardinal was traveling in Asia, and we hoped he would go to East Timor. Now, if you know East Timor, you are really smart and really experienced in foreign affairs. East Timor was a place where the Indonesian army and government was oppressing the people, particularly Catholics. And the Cardinal was going to visit and show solidarity with those people. And at that very moment, the Indonesian army invaded East Timor. They killed Caritas workers, they hacked the bishop, they burned down the cathedral, and it looked like they were going to massacre many people, including the Bishop of East Timor. And Cardinal McCarrick, who could have been there, except that he was forbidden to go, was here in Washington. And when he saw this, he called Hillary Clinton, who at that time was the First Lady. And the Clinton administration had said they have no responsibility for this, that they couldn't take care of everything. And the Cardinal made his case to the First Lady and said, these are human beings and they need our protection. And she said, you have to talk to Richard Holbrooke. And he got on the phone to Richard Holbrooke. He had built a relationship with a number of generals in the Pentagon around the issue of landmines. And it turns out the Indonesian army listened to the Pentagon more than they listened to anybody else. So he called the generals. And in the space of 24 hours, 36 hours, the policy of our government was reversed. And we supported a peacekeeping force. And the Australians were that peacekeeping force. And because of his knowledge, because of his commitment, but also because of his relationships, he was able to save lives. And that is just one story. There are hundreds of stories. The other one is a more personal story. You are too young to remember, but after 9/11, there was an anthrax attack on the Capitol. Some of you work in the Capitol. Well, I was in the Senate office building with a number of other colleagues. I was meeting with Senator Lieberman. And if you know the story, Senator Daschle received the anthrax and was opened up, and we were on the same air conditioning system. And they ordered us all to come and be tested. And it was a terrible feeling. We were in a long line. It was very quiet. It's never quiet on Capitol Hill. This was quiet. And the biggest Q-tip I've ever seen. And I called in, and they said, well, Mr. Carr, your test was negative, but we really don't know what we're doing here. So you ought to treat it as a positive test and take this medicine, powerful medicine. It had a lot of side effects. Well, my wife was sort of concerned. My kids never called, except when they needed money. But every couple days, the phone would ring, and Cardinal McCarrick would say, how you doing? How you feeling?
I had money on it.
But here was this powerful figure who talked to the First Lady, talked to the President, talked to generals, who was calling me up and saying, how you doing? And so he is a leader, but he's also a pastor, and he's a wonderful friend. And he is a great person to talk about Pope Francis and his message for us. Right before the conclave, a group of us were meeting to try and raise some money for our little initiative. If any of you are millionaires, I'd like your email address and phone number. I'll check with you afterwards. And at the end of the meeting, we said, okay, now Pope Benedict has resigned. You're going over for these meetings. Then there's going to be the conclave. What's going to happen? And I don't know if you remember this, but the Cardinal said, well, the Italians, the Latin Americans, the Africans, this and this and this, and we'll see about that and all that. And his last 4 words were, do not forget about Cardinal Bergoglio. I guess that's 5 words. And at that time, nobody was talking about Cardinal Bergoglio. I think he was 41st on the betting line at the time. But my question, my opening question for you, Cardinal, is how did you have a sense that no one else seemed to have had that Cardinal Bergoglio might be our next Holy Father? What did you see? What do you think the Church needed that he has provided?
Well, let me just say that I felt that, and I felt that Jorge Bergoglio would be a great pope. But if I was smart, I would have put a couple of bucks on it. Because at that time, there's an Irish bet master, a bookie in Dublin, who bets on everything. He will be betting now on who takes the Senate. He'll be betting now on all the different contests that's going on in our country for the Senate and for governors and everything. He'll be betting on all of this, and he'll take money for it. And he's a millionaire. He guesses right. Well, Jorge Bergoglio was on the list of possibilities, but the odds on him were 200 to 1. Now, John thinks I'm smart. If I was smart, I'd put a couple of bucks on Jorge Bergoglio. I would be on vacation still now. 200 to 1. It was interesting that as the time went by, as they got to meet Jorge, they got to listen to him, they got to listen to what some of the others were saying. And I was too old. I did not vote. I was too old to get in there. At 80, you lose your vote among the cardinals. So I'm 84 now, so I was 83. So what happened was that toward the end, the last day, the cardinals were already in conclave, but the last day, the odds on Cardinal Bergoglio were down to 40 to 1. So someone had figured out that this guy was a possibility, and he went all the way from 200 to 1. They stopped those odds because they figured they were going to lose money, and they did, and they moved it down to 40 to 1. So it wasn't just myself. There were others who knew this man. John loves to ask me to tell you one great story about the cardinal. I was going to Argentina for something, and I heard some business in Uruguay, some church business in Uruguay, and I left Uruguay to go back. And so the cardinal and I are classmates, which means they go to the College of Cardinals. So we were both named cardinals the same day. There were about 30 of us, so it was a reasonably big crowd. But if you're your classmates from college, you don't lose contact with them. You see them. So I was going to do something in Argentina. I think I had an ordination in Argentina in the west, in the province of Mendoza. So I figured, gee, my friend is there in Buenos Aires. So I wrote him a quick note. I said, I'm going to be passing through Buenos Aires. Can I buy you lunch? So he wrote back right away, and he said, when are you coming in? So I told him. He said, okay, I'll meet you. I said, no, just the cardinal. I'm retired. When you're retired, you're nothing. So, anyway, so I get off the plane, and there he is, grabs my bag. I said, no, what do I take it? So brings me to the car. He had borrowed a car. Actually, he didn't have his own car. But he had this old Jewish gentleman who was a dear friend of his who loans him the car, and the Jewish gentleman drives it. Maybe because they don't think he's a good driver, I'm not sure. But anyway, so he meets me, and we get in the back of the car. And we drove into to the center of Buenos Aires. Now, when I have visitors, I live in Washington. I live outside Washington, but I live in a very beautiful African-American community. right outside of Hyattsville, so it's just very close to the district line. When somebody comes to visit me, I pick them up at Dully's or at Reagan, and I bring them in. And as we're coming in, I say, "Now, that big needle up there. That's the Washington Monument." I say something about that. I said, "There's a Jefferson monument and Lincoln," and I tell them everything. And then there's the State Department buildings there, and then this is the Potomac River, the famous Potomac River. I give them some. And you're talking about, and there's the Kennedy Center with these great operas and great movies and all kinds of theaters are in that building. And then there's the Mint, and there's the FBI, and there's the Congress. Traveling with him, across a bridge, he said, right under this bridge is the poorest neighborhood in all of Buenos Aires. And it's there that I go whenever I can, because people don't come there. They're afraid. It's so poor that people are really in bad shape. So I said, all right, we move along. He looks up at a hill. He says, up on the hill there's a hospital. And I try to go there as often as I can. It's not the best hospital, but they run out of medicines often. But that's where the poor have to go, because they have no way to get anywhere else. And then down the street, that's the prison. Many young people in that prison, too many. So it's not a place for young people, because they will meet hardened criminals, and their own psyche will be changed by that. And this, the whole way in, not one great embassy, not one great church building, not even that's a great church, just the places where people who are hurting are living. And when he spoke before the you may have heard this, before the conclave begins, there's a week in which all the cardinals are present, the voters and the non-voters, and everyone has a chance to speak. And because the non-voters are thrown out when the conclave begins, we all talk. We talk then. It's our one chance to talk. So, and many of the voters talk too, but almost every single one of the non-voters talks. It's our only chance. So we try to make our point. But Cardinal McCarrick spoke, and I was there listening when he spoke. He spoke, I think it was a Friday, and he spoke for 4 minutes. Stopped at like 3 minutes, 40 seconds. Many of them went over. I went over. Not too much. It really wasn't. and he got up and he began to speak about the church's need to work on the periphery, the people on the periphery. And he spoke less than 5 minutes. But that was the one, the only one, I think it's true, the only talk that we gave. 5 minutes was the limit. I went 5 minutes and 15 seconds. What can you do? But he finished 15 seconds before, and you could hear the silence. When the others spoke, there'd be some shuffling guys would move their papers or something like that. When he spoke, there wasn't a sound. There was an extraordinary impression. Very simple. It didn't read from notes, but an extraordinary presentation of a man who really loved the poor. I spoke the following day, and I commented on 3 of the cardinals who had spoken, how impressed I was, how touched I was by what they were saying. One was Bergoglio, and then there were 2 others. And he said to me that afternoon, I said, I mentioned it. He said, yes, I heard. So, but when I spoke, I said, what I think, I'm nothing, I don't vote, and I'm an old man, but, and I was never a great man, despite what my buddy says. But, I said that I thought the church needed 3 things. It needed someone who loved the poor. Not that every pope has not done that, but someone who would not be happy until he really worked with the poor, until he really had the whole church looking on the periphery. I didn't use that word, but that's the word that he had used. We're the people who don't have what the rest of us have. They have a lousy education. They're not eating well. They don't have good medicine. Their jobs are just pickup jobs, and they're trying to keep a family going. The tremendous pressures in Latin America of the poor are extraordinary. So I said, we need a pope who's going to really love the poor. Secondly, I said, I would hope that we'd have a pope who, whether or not he came from Latin America, would have a special interest in Latin America, because that's where half the Catholics of the world are, and we can't avoid doing that. Let me digress for a moment just to say one reason why I did that. It was this: the last naming of cardinals before the election of Pope Francis. In the last naming, there were 26 cardinals named, not one active cardinal from Latin America, not one. And that bothered me because it just seemed that this is not the way to go. There were 2 Latin Americans; they both retired, so that's one of the reasons why I said that we've got to have. The church has got to look at Latin America, because we're going to lose it otherwise. And then the third thing was that I thought the new Holy Father, whoever that you elected, you voters, should be a man who will be committed to open the gates and talk to other religious groups. And that certainly JP2 did, that certainly Pope Benedict did, but just to continue that, to someone who seriously would be talking to the Protestants, seriously would be talking to the Jews, seriously be talking to the Muslims. Not just, hello, I'm happy to meet you, but can we do this together? Can we rejoice that we all have some extraordinary things that we both, that this the one God, a God who loves us, a God who made us, a God who wants us to be happy, all those things. And I don't know of any religion who has a God who doesn't want people to be happy, who doesn't want people to be successful. If they have a God like that, they're not going to stay in that religion long. So that there are so many things that we have in common. Those are the 3 things that I said. And
Well, sounds like you got what you wished for.
Oh yeah. No, very, very much so. And
Before I ask you, what does it mean to have a pope from Latin America who has those values? Tell the story. After the conference, you stayed, and because so many of the cardinals were tied up in the conclave, they asked you to do some things, and you were presiding at, I think, a profession of vows.
No, I know the story, okay.
And I think you fell ill.
I not only feel I collapsed.
Where we had is they thought you were dead.
That's right. Yeah, I may have been. Only God knows. But I had gone. Obviously, we all were summoned. The ones who vote, the ones who can't vote. All the cardinals are summoned, and they're summoned to this. We're all summoned to this first part, which I just mentioned now, where everybody can talk, and then the ones under 80 stay for the election, and the rest of us are thrown out. But the newspapers and the television are always interested to get as many cardinals on the wire, because okay, who's going to be pope? Who's going to be pope? And of course you can't answer. Number one, you don't know, and number two, if you didn't know, you couldn't tell them, and they'd wonder how you didn't know. But anyway, so I was on a lot, because a lot of the stations are American stations, and there were only, I think, 2 American cardinals who stayed after the others went in. We had a number of cardinals who were voting, obviously, and maybe 9 or 10 Americans, and then the others would have been there for these conversations that I just spoke about before. But then that was over, they would go home, or they went visiting around in Italy, and then they'll come back for the time of the election. So I was the only one really around. So that It was me or nothing. So I was Cardinal Yuldu, because there's nobody, one of the real movers and shakers, 'cause they were all voting, and so I got a chance to do it. So during that time, so then when the election was over, I said, gee, I might as well wait till the installation to what used to be the coronation, but Pope Paul VI stopped that. So then, there's a community. I live in as I mentioned, I live in Hyattsville in Chillum, and I live with a community of religious religious priests and brothers who are from Argentina, and that's why we're Nuestro Señor de Luján. ¿Hay de Argentina? ¿Hay alguien de aquí de Argentina? Muy bien, usted conoce Nuestro Señor de Luján. And so there's a community of sisters that is the feminine branch of this, called the Servants of the Lord, and they were celebrating their 25th anniversary, big important time. And because the other cardinals, the real important ones, were getting ready for that the next day, they wanted to do it on the feast of Saint Joseph. The Holy Father was installed on the feast of Saint Joseph, so they moved it back to the vigil. So they did it on the 18th, and I was the only one around that they knew. So they said, would I offer the mass and preach? So I said I'd be honored to. So I did, and I really prepared what for me was a really good homily in Italian, which I showed to one of the Italian girls who worked in the seminary where I was staying, and I said, fix that and make it sound all right. And then I said to her, do you understand? Oh, she said, I understand it perfectly. It is very beautifully the homily of a Spaniard speaking Italian. So I said, okay, we make it an Italian speaking Italian. So she made some changes. So I did well. I was very pleased with it. I was happy. And I felt fine. I was kidding with some of the bishops there. The Cardinal Dean, the Dean of the college, Cardinal Sodano, was presiding. It was a big deal. A number of other, like maybe 7 or 8 archbishops and bishops were there with me, and many of the leadership of this congregation. It was really a big deal. So, and I finished preaching, and I was satisfied. And then they had the professional profession of vows of some of the sisters. We did all of that. But sisters like to multiply prayers. I'll never speak to you again if you tell any that knows what I say. Sisters like to multiply prayers. And I found myself, I said, I feel tired. I'm getting a headache. So I started cutting out some of the prayers. I said, I shouldn't do that. But not the important ones, not the mass prayers, but you have prayers like. So anyway, we did Litany of the Saints. So I got down and I got up, and now I'm starting to feel a little dizzy. And at a certain point in time, I said to myself, I guess, I don't know if I said it out loud, and I'm not sure I said it in English or Italian or whatever, but I said, I got to sit down. And thank God, where I was standing reading the prayers at the lectern, there was a chair right behind me. So I collapsed into the chair and passed out totally. Thank God I did it in the chair, because if I had done it, there's all kinds of marble on the ground. I would have really had. You really would have seen what happens here. These wounds are not from there. I fell again on my way to Gaza 2 weeks ago, but I really mashed my head. But anyway, I fall a lot. So when you get my age, you fall a lot. Life is like it. So anyway, so I collapsed, and they took me in a chair, and they brought me in, and they laid me out on the floor. And the pastor came in, the pastor of the church. He looked at me, and he looked for signs. He said, he's dead. He's dead. And the nuns got all upset, and so they called the cops, the emergency. And I was out for about 20 minutes. And finally, the emergency guys came in, and they whack you, and they bump you, and they try to, get something started. And one of the sisters says, "Ooh, you're gonna hurt him." And the fellow said, "Sister, if he's dead, he's not going to mind," which made perfect logic. So then, after 20 minutes, I came out, and then, and we are all so silly this way. We said, "Oh, I was fine. I didn't pass out at all. I'm good. I'll miss the mass, but I'll go to the reception afterwards." And he's trying to get out. And so they immediately they locked me into the gurney. They said, "You have to go to the hospital." So I went to the hospital, and they said I had some. I don't want to give you my whole medical history, but
Let's skip that
we
part.
can skip the medical. Okay, thank you. So then they said I needed a pacemaker. Now I have one. It was a problem of a brachycardia. If any of you had studied medicine, the heart begins to beat more and more slowly, and if you don't do something, it stops. And then that's the end of that. So anyway, they took care of me, and they got me out, and a couple of days later I got out, and that night it was actually the night of his installation. He was installed that morning. Holy Father called and said, how you doing? I heard you were sick. I heard you didn't come to the ceremony. And being very pious as cardinals, being very pious as cardinals are supposed to be, I said, well, Holy Father, I guess the Lord still has some work for me to do. To which he replied, yes, that's possible. Of course, on the other hand, it's possible that the devil did not have your accommodations ready. And as every Catholic knows, the fear that I had immediately was that he was speaking infallibly. So that's my story. But I was
great
alive.
Story. What does it mean to have a pope from Latin America instead of Italy, instead of Poland? What does it mean for the church? What does it mean for young Latin American leaders in this country and from Latin America? What difference does it make to have a pope from Latin America and this pope from Latin America?
Okay, well, that's a 3-hour response. I'll be short. First, what it means for Latin America is a recognition that Latin America cannot be overlooked now. You know, for years we've had half the church in Latin America, and yet numbers of cardinals, numbers of bishops have not, numbers of people in real authority have not been present in Latin America, in the leadership of the church. And I think some in Latin America felt that, why don't they understand that here's where your people are? And so the vast majority of our Catholic people who are in Latin America now are going to be able to say, well, you know, they recognize that this is one of the strongholds of the church. This is one of the most important areas where people are baptized, where people receive the Eucharist, where vocations are present, and where so many great things are happening. So we should not be the weak sister of the church. We should be, in a very special way, one of the leaders of the church. And now suddenly, it's a Latin American, and I think so. It means for the people of Latin America, it means recognition that the church is here, and is here in a very powerful, in a very real, in a very holy way. Secondly, it means that the church will now have to look at the situation in Latin America, the situation of the church in Latin America, more carefully than it has in the past. This Holy Father, being a member of of Salem, which, as you may know, is the council of all the bishops' conferences in Latin America. He was on the board of Salem during this last Eucharistic Congress in Brazil. He played a very important role. He's a go-to guy among the bishops of Latin America. If they're having trouble coming to a conclusion, if they're having trouble coming to a modus vivendi of the whole crowd, as often as not, they'll say, let's ask Bergoglio. Let's put Bergoglio on this team. And a number of cardinals said this to me after the election. They said, we're so pleased that we got Bergoglio, because we have counted on him when the bishops get together, which is very wonderful to hear, that in bishops' meetings, so if there's a Gordian knot you have to untie somehow, they say, well, just get Bergoglio on that. And he would do it. And so you have a man here who is respected, not just because he happens to be a holy man, I think he really is, but not just because of that, but because he's an intelligent man, and he knows how to deal with large groups. He knows how to deal with other bishops, and he knows how to deal with laity. And in a special way, he knows how to deal with the poor. In my office where I work, I have a picture. Many of you have seen it, I'm sure, but I love it. A picture of him dressed in his suit in the subway, going to one of the things that he goes to at night. I said to him once when I was visiting, I said, I want to take you out to dinner tonight. He said, no, I can't. I'll have lunch with you, but I promised this parish or that parish that I would go out. And almost every night, he was out in the parishes. And, they would say, we'll send a car for you, and the police will be happy to put sirens and everything. He said, I'll take the subway. And that's what he does. I take the metro.
What do you make, Cardinal, some of his most powerful statements? A couple days ago, he talked to a group of community movements, and he talked about defending the poor, the dignity of the poor. He talked about overcoming poverty, the structures of poverty. He's talked about the idolatry of money. He's talked about the inadequacies of the market. And a lot of us look and say, that's consistent with what Pope John Paul said, with Pope Benedict said, but it's said with a new urgency because of his love for the poor. Others say, oh, he's a good man, he's holy, but he doesn't know much about economics. He's from Argentina, and they don't know much about capitalism, or they don't understand how the market works. It's sort of dismissive because he's from Latin America. Two questions. One, his plea for economic justice seems to be a real challenge for us and for others. And secondly, what do you make of these people who say, oh, don't listen to him, he's only from Latin America?
Well, for the first one, I think it helps, forgive me, I'm not a religious, it helps the fact that he's a Jesuit. You can't put Jesuits totally down because they are smart. And they have he has the qualifications. He has his doctorate, and he's written. You can see from his writing that he's no fool. I would recommend to anyone who wants to answer any of those questions, and any questions you will bring up, read what is called an exhortation. It's not long, and it's funny, and it's beautiful, and it's religious, and it's holy, and it's uplifting, and it's challenging, all those things together. They're called the joy of the gospel, Evangelii Gaudium. And in that, the citations, he cites this French philosopher, he cites this German theologian, he cites so many of the Latin American, even the authors of the Romans, he just able to. This his knowledge is extraordinary, and knowledge of the economy too. He talks about different levels and different forces in the economy. Knows much more than I know about this, and I'm old, and I'm American, and I have my doctorate, but this is a very intelligent man, and he's no fool in that he knows the weaknesses in each one of them, and because he speaks simply, he speaks very clearly. He puts his finger right on the message, puts his finger right on the difficulties. He doesn't talk around. There's no human respect in there. I shouldn't say this because I'm going to offend this guy. He tells it like it is. and he tells it freely and openly. He tells it with a smile and with great love, and no one is offended because he tells it with great love. But this is a wise and brilliant man. Read that, Evangelium Gaudium. Read it, and you will see so many things. And he's a pastor. I was on TV a while ago, right after, maybe a few months after he was elected, and they said, okay, John Paul II, Benedict XVI, Francis, what's the difference? In a word. Well, I said, it's easy. John Paul II was a prophet. He was a prophet. He was able to stand on the stage of the world and make a change in it. Benedict was a teacher, brilliant teacher. This man's a pastor. Doesn't mean he's not a teacher. Doesn't mean he's not a prophet. But he's a pastor.
You talked about how direct he is. He talks about couch potato Catholics, and that makes me very anxious. Talks about Mr. and Mrs. Weiner, which sounds like a lot of us when we complain about the church. Before we turn to questions to some of the leaders of the group, this is a group, you listen to Jose, this is a group of young leaders who are working here in Washington. They work in public life. They'll either continue to serve here or they'll go back to Latin. What can they learn from Pope Francis?
Okay. Let me answer that in the light of the little TV interview I had. So some of you were coming in right outside before we began. The fellow asked me some very key questions, and one of them was, as you look at the church today, with the Hispanics coming in, you're losing many of them. What do you say about that? Well, I say this, that this is why we're all here. You wouldn't be here if you didn't really love the church. Now, you're not all going to be monks and nuns, huh? Although, if there are any here, I'd be happy to talk to you at the end of it. But you know that the church is important. In your heart of heart, you know that. Or you might be angry at this priest, or angry at this nun, or angry at this bishop, or anything like that. That's all possible. Or you might be angry because we consistently talk about this or talk about that, and we don't talk enough about other things. That's possible. But you wouldn't be here if you didn't think the church was something in your life, something that you had to work with, something that you had to understand, something that you have to look at. That's why you're here. And because of that, you are of such great importance to all of us. The church in the United States is at least 40% Hispanic right now. The church in the United States, as you look at the age profiles, as you look at the younger people, they're probably 50% Hispanic right now. So what is the church in the United States going to look like 20 years from now? It's going to be a Hispanic church. And who are going to be the leaders of that Hispanic church? I'm looking at them. You and young people like you all over the country. And this is why we need to have you involved. We need to have you interested. We need to have you angry with us sometimes. We need that. Because then we need to have you involved in all the emotions that come from belonging to something. Just like there are moments when you get mad at your father or mother, so there are moments when you got to get mad at the church. And that's not bad. That's family. So John is saying, why do I think it's important? Not just because you are going to be the majority, but because you have a chance to make a difference. If you understand Catholic social thought, if you understand that we can't ride roughshod over the poor, if you understand that there should be no group in the United States who is discriminated against or who is put down, if you know in your heart that we're all brothers and sisters in God's one human family, then you can do wonderful things in the church and outside the church. You can be the leaders in ecumenism. You can be the leaders in talking to other faiths. Because if you know, as we teach, that we're all brothers and sisters, there is one God. We don't say, my Father who art in heaven. We say, our Father. If you say, my Father, you lost the whole prayer. We are all one family. And a fellow asked me, he gave me a wonderful, he said, what's the difference when Hispanics come? Do they lose the church sometime? I say, yes, yeah. The real fear that I have is that you become too American. Because you come, maybe not you, but your parents come. And they still come today, thanks be to God. They come with a sense of family we need here. They come with a sense of what is a father of family, what are his responsibilities, what does he accept as his role, or a mother, what does she accept as her role? Now, she's not going to be put down. The president of Brazil is not going to be put down. The president of Chile is not going to be put down. She's not going to be put down because the Latin American woman is making progress. So you have to do that too here in the United States. But the big thing is you have to come with these values. Don't lose the values because maybe Americans don't always have these values. Don't lose the values. Bring your values with you. Develop your values and shout out how important family is. Shout out how important mothers and fathers are. Shout out how important it is to get a good education. Shout out how important it is that nobody is so poor that they can't make it in this country. Shout out those values and live them. That's why we're here tonight. And that, in God's great secret mystery, is why you're here in this country.
Terrific. We have several people who were part of our steering group who are going to ask questions of the Cardinal. If you identify yourself and fire away.
Hi, is this working? Yeah.
Identify yourself.
Yeah, hi, Cardinal. My name is Camila Rivas. I'm from El Salvador. I am in the executive committee of the Latin American Leadership Initiative. And I had a question for you. What do you think are today's biggest challenges for us Latin Americans in the U.S. and in our countries as Catholic leaders? Thank you.
That's the key question. And that's, I tried to more or less work on the answer a little while ago because the key challenge is not to lose who you are. The key challenge, not to lose that sense of family, not to lose that sense of individual, not to lose that sense of what is a father and a mother, not to lose that sense of belonging to a church. Because if you lose that, I think, and I'm not talking, I was a sociologist. 100 years ago, I was a sociologist. But, so let me talk as a sociologist for a moment. That you will, if you lose who you ought to be, you will lose who you are. I must write a book about that. If you lose who you ought to be, you lose who you are. Because if you begin to accept pure American ideals, make money, be powerful, don't worry about your wife, your husband, or your children, they'll take care of themselves. If you begin to lose your Latin values, you're going to lose yourself. So that's why your presence here is very important.
Mm-hmm. Another question.
Hi.
Why don't you stand up? Okay.
So my name is Fernando Parro. I'm from Chile. I work here in Washington at the Federal Reserve Board. So my question is, if you have in mind, or you can tell us some concrete examples on how we can exercise and strengthen our leadership skills.
That's a good question because it's It's one that's very practical. This is one of the ways. This is one of the ways, by meeting together, by talking together, not just by talking to me, but by talking to each other. And by after Tamara say, do you remember anything he said? You said, no, I didn't remember. I was sleeping during the whole thing. But to have someone say, he said this, is that true? How does that really affect us? Is that something that's not? I think you can do it by speaking about, by getting together and speaking about who you are. If you're all by yourself and you are in a totally American atmosphere, which is fine, but there are questions you won't ask. There are questions that won't come into your life. Questions about religion you won't bring up. Questions about family you won't bring up. Questions about what is important in life you won't bring up. So that you need once in a while to get together with other people who have the same extraordinary culture that you bring. I'm prejudiced. I was 11 years in Latin America, so that I'm prejudiced. I think the culture that you bring from Colombia to Cuba, from Brazil to anywhere, it is the we have been so oppressed by the agenda, like la agenda negra, in this country, and I blame England for it more than anything else. But I think it's that if I have any expertise, it's in the Middle East and not in Latin America, although I love Latin America. But there's a sickness called Orientalism. And Orientalism says that many people who are very smart look at the Orientals as people who don't know what they're doing. There's a little bit of Orientalism in dealing with Latin America. People say, oh, no, they don't know what they're doing. They fight all the time. There's wars down there all the time. I think what we must do is let them know how brilliant and how value-filled is the culture of Latin America that you bring with you. And never, the worst thing a Latin can do is say, well, I'm only a Latin. It's great that you're a Latin. I'm only a Puerto Rican. It's great to be a Puerto Rican. I'm only a Brazilian. It's great to be. You know the history of your own countries. Now, some of you now, your children will be second, third generation, and make sure they know. That sure, they've got to know what America's about. Absolutely, I don't want to ever be quoted as saying, "Don't be American." But don't lose your roots. Don't lose your roots. Be bicultural. Make sure that you understand. Read some of the authors of Latin America. And get a sense now. Of course, you can. You're a Latin American Pope who speaks every day. Every day he gets up at Mass and you get a 5-minute homily. And it's great. Get in touch with that, and read in Spanish. Don't lose for God's sake, don't lose your Spanish or your Portuguese.
The question was for you, but permit me to just add something. I think one of the things that might be helpful is really the reason for our gathering, which is being a Catholic. We have a different way of looking at the world. We have a set of ideas about human life and dignity, about solidarity, about subsidiarity, about the option for the poor that Pope Francis epitomizes. And so one of the things that prepares you for leadership, I think, is to know those ideas really well. There are a lot of people of good hearts, but the sort of care for others doesn't have a substantive framework underneath it. And so the work we're going to do together is to make sure we know those ideas. Cardinal McCarrick has built his life around those ideas, and the Pope is a walking, talking parable of those ideas. But there is a different way of looking at the world that comes with our faith. One more question, I think, before we go to the group. Well,
Hi, I'm Rudy Moreno. I'm from Brazil, work at the IDB. Cardinal, I wanted to ask you perhaps a little more about, where do you see Latin America and, I think my colleague here was saying a little bit about the examples, the concrete examples of leadership. But if you think of us, we're fairly young, and we might be in very powerful institutions, but we're not on top of the chain. So we're actually, somewhere closer to the bottom, perhaps. So where can we exercise that leadership? How do we do it? How do we show those Catholic values?
That's a great question. I'm going to give you a funny answer. By getting up the chain, by working by working hard. By working hard. A lot of my family is Irish. I'm Irish, Polish, and French, and all kinds of stuff. But a lot of my family is Irish, and they remember. My grandparents remember signs in the windows. Irish need not apply for jobs. No Irish here. And they work their way up, and the Hispanics have to do the same, because you don't realize, and because. The most horrible thing for me would be in America if you had the Hispanic people not voting. If you had them not voting, because they say, it's too much. I'm only one here. We've got to get up. You've got to get your people involved politically. You've got to get them involved educationally. You've got to make sure that the percentage of doctorates in the United States are commensurate with the percentage of Hispanics in the United States. I think that's something that you've got to support higher education, because that's how people get ahead. And it's through higher education. You're on the bottom rung now, let's say. You have a doctorate, then you're going to move up. Or you are involved in a political party, then you're going to move up. I think it is important, and notice I'm staying away from priests and religious vocations, because that, of course, is a wonderful way to influence the lives of others, by being teachers in schools and universities, things like that. But I think you've got to, the Hispanic young people have to realize that there are places waiting for them up on top. And it's just by force of demography. If you're not there, then some other group is going to be there. But you should be there, because you're going to be, please God, we will not allow this stupidity of just one child families. China finds that they can't survive on one child families. We can't survive on one child families either. So we've got to know that these. I talked earlier about family values. Family values say, okay, the joy of a big family that has been so much in Latin America. The joy of a big family. I'm not saying everybody has to have 20 children, but the joy of a big family, the joy of having brothers and sisters. That is an extraordinary grace, and so you have to. I think you have to say, okay, I am here in this country with this extraordinary faith, Catholic faith, the extraordinary culture that faith has imbued, and I'm going to hold on to that, and I'm going to develop it, and I'm going to because so many parts of it are. What John was saying earlier, are tied in to the whole question of the dignity of life, the dignity of individuals, the dignity of married people, all those things. I think we're going to have to make sure that this country hears that. Don't be afraid to say, I believe in family. I believe in values. I'm a Catholic. I'm not afraid of being a Catholic. I believe in subsidiarity, John was saying. You know, when you look at, tell you a story, quick story. I'm always trying to get the Congress to give more money to help the poor nations of the world, even many in Latin America. And we did a survey, years, maybe 10, 20 years ago. The survey said, asking Catholic people, do you think that our country gives too much money away to the poor countries? Yes, majority said, yes, absolutely. And we would say, well, how much do you think we give away? They say, well, maybe 15, 20% of our money. And and the question was, how much do you think they should give away? Well, maybe 7 or 8%. And then we'd say, they're giving away 0.005. And then they say, oh, I didn't know that. See that? So I think that's, that's a crusade. You got to say, hey, got to take care of people around the world. There is subsidiarity that John was mentioning. We're not alone in the world. There's one world. We're not alone in the world. There are a lot of poor people in America, but I travel a lot, and there are so many poor people in the world. Even in the favelas of Rio, there's so much you could do. And years ago, when I worked in the Caribbean, there was a mud flat outside San Juan, Puerto Rico, and there was no sanitary concerns. Just the people were drinking from the water. They were using the water for toilets. They were using it, and you say, this shouldn't be. And so we have to be smart enough to look at that and say, that shouldn't be. We have to, grab a cause and follow it.
We have a few minutes left. Are there other questions for the Cardinal? Raise your hand and Caitlin will find you.
They're all
Down
sleeping.
here.
Hi, thank you very much for the talk. It's been really interesting. I have 2 questions, if I may. I'm originally from Austria, I should say. I consider myself a bit of an honorary Latin American, much like you. I've spent much time in Latin America, and I've worked on many issues of Latin America. I think my 2 questions are, and I say as an Austrian, this is very easy to ask. I think many Latinos who have come here and many Latinos who have grown up here have gained skills and all the things that you said. We've chased many of the ideals of having a better life. Is there a certain obligation that Latinos have towards their home countries to either have to think about going back and influencing policy, influencing governments, going to actually do the work rather than sort of stay here, which is if I may, more selfishly, sort of the purpose is more selfish because you want a better life, which is nothing bad, but I think my question is it a me-orientated sort of ideal versus for the good of a better nation, even though that is definitely a very difficult thing to do? And my second question, today I was writing a brief on sustainability in Latin America, and something that struck me as very interesting, I was looking at the examples of how the developed world has put all these restrictions and issues on developing countries, sort of saying, we don't really want to adapt our lifestyle and change our ways, but you are now going to preserve all your natural resources so that we can continue doing what we're doing. And I think the problem is, like you were saying, I think because there still isn't that presence of, Hispanics at a point where they can actually say, well, this is not how this should go. We should not be paying the price for what you have done and are sustaining to do. So I think my latter question is, how do we now help to actually bridge that gap a little bit better so that people are not paying the price for something that others are just not able or wanting to give up?
2 very good questions. The first one, as you know, especially in Central America, I'm sure this is probably true in El Salvador, and it's certainly true in Honduras, the percentage of income, national income, that comes from remissions from the United States is enormous. And that, I think, has been a real sign of the family spirit of our people when they come to the United States. They haven't forgotten how poor the families are back there. And so it's been extraordinary. It's been a great blessing. They don't say, okay, I'm going to get another car. They say, I'm going to see if I can get my father a car. And so that's something. Should they all go back? Well, I think a lot of that is going to depend on family. If you have your wife down there, your husband down there, then I think you have to say, well, there's where I belong, unless you can come up here. Now, this is why for years we've been trying. I've been one of the loudest voices, not one of the most intelligent voices, one of the loudest ones, about a reform of migration legislation here. That's something that would be really something important to work on as Hispanics, and as the more you are able to take a role in our society, not to walk away. They used to say, this is not nice, but they used to say, all these families from let's say Paraguay. Anybody from Paraguay here? Good, they could say Paraguay. All these families from Paraguay, after they're here for 10 years, they become suddenly old Spanish families. And you don't never lose who you are. Never lose. I love Paraguay. That's why I say that. I spent a good time in Paraguay. But so that there's something very important about who you are. So there are ways. I think you can't forget whether you should go back. I think depending on family ties and something, maybe some people should. As a general rule, I think you have to do case by case. Now, the other one I've forgotten already.
Sustainability.
Sustainability. Yeah. Well, I think this is one of the reasons we sometimes treat, the United States sometimes treats other people as we treated slaves years ago. And they sometimes treat other countries that way. That they are not important geographically for us, or they're not important strategically for us, so they're ignored. It was interesting during the Cold War how many countries were being tremendously supported by us just so they wouldn't be supported by Russia. So that I think that was stupid, but it was a good thing for the wrong reason. Now, if we can get people to do the good thing for the right reason, and this is what John was saying on this question of solidarity, that the thing that I just answered before, this question of we should give 8%. Well, if you give 8% would be wonderful, but they should give maybe 1%. That would like triple what we're doing now. So that and you should be the ones who are talking about that when you should support government leaders as you elect them. That's the question, I think. And the more Hispanic people we have, citizens who are working here, the more they're going to be asking that question. What are you doing for Latin America? What are you doing for? Are you helping education there? Are you helping? I think of Brazil. Are you helping them to preserve the lungs of the world in the Amazon? So I think that's a voice that has to be raised, and you are the ones who are going to be doing it, because you are the ones who have this culture of a Catholic community that is going to change the world.
Well, one last question up there.
Hello, my name is Dominique Benessi. I'm a student journalist at the George Washington University. I just recently came back from a semester abroad in Jordan in the Middle East, and I know you said you were just in Gaza. And I had the fortune of seeing Pope Francis at the Mass in Jordan. It was incredible seeing our Muslim brothers and sisters also cheering on our Christian brothers and sisters in the Middle East. It was amazing to see that. But I came back here so excited, so enthused. GW Catholics had also just gone on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And the discouraging thing is, there's not a very open dialogue between Catholics and Muslims. And I think that a lot of Catholics I've talked to, even in my student center, say the Muslim religion isn't something that we have a lot in common with. It's something that teaches hate. What do you think is a way to open up that dialogue so that Catholics are more open to Islam and to understanding that religion? I know that I know that it is different, but at the same time, how can we look at our Muslim brothers and sisters and say they're not that different than us?
I should point out before the Cardinal answers, yesterday he was given an award because of his leadership in Catholic-Muslim dialogue and relationships. So you asked the right guy.
Well, I think the only way you can do it is study. You know, if there are some wonderful books by Catholic authors about Islam today. You know, you don't have to read the books by the ISIS people or something like that. You know? But there are, I don't know if they do write books. They work as mostly do ammunition. But but there are some very good books about Islam that tells you, and you know, even if like when Pope Francis was in Jordan, he said some nice things about Islam, and that's the same thing about other popes who have had the opportunity to speak to that. I will be going in December to Rome for a Muslim Christian summit. It's the third one they've had, and we will have questions. We will have some annoyances. I brought some things up yesterday in a little talk I gave. One is the blasphemy laws in Pakistan that are absolutely terrible, and we can't say we're in favor of them. They will murder our people. I think one person that they murdered, Bhatti, was a member of the cabinet of the president of Pakistan and was murdered. And these half the Muslim world was saying that's terrible, and the other half of the Muslim world was saying right, he deserved it. So there are things in the Muslim world that we can't be happy with. The blasphemy laws of Pakistan is one of them. Another one is the reaction to apostasy. You know, when if a Catholic becomes a Muslim, we don't kill them. We might want to. We may say how stupid you are, but in the old days, if a Catholic became a Protestant, you might have killed them. So that we have to look at the history and see how people have reacted. We have really done much in the Catholic Church. Second Vatican Council was a great blessing, and it showed us that we all have to live together. This thing I said before, we are brothers and sisters of God's one human family. I gave a retreat maybe 10 years ago in Malaysia, and to the graduate faculty of theology of the Muslim University of the what's the capital of Malaysia? I can't remember. Well, Kuala, thank you, former State Department executive official. Father John is one of the smartest men we have in the diocese. So, anyway, I'm praising Father John. I forgot what I was going to say. So I gave this retreat, and the beginning of the retreat, I talked about the obligations and authority in the Catholic community. And I took the encyclicals. I took two of John Paul's encyclicals, Syntes Basanas, which is easy because it's a combination, and Labor Exercens, which is about working. And I explained it, and we got all the what John was saying earlier, subsidiarity, solidarity, all these great things that we believe in that should be the way you live a government life. And they came and they asked a lot of questions. The last day they came back And they came back with quotations from the Quran and from the Hadith of the Prophet, saying, see, we're saying the same thing, we're saying the same thing. Now, we believe in a Trinity. They don't believe in that. We believe in sacraments. They don't have sacraments. But we believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ. They don't believe in that. Those are major. You can't be a Catholic without they're the pillars. But they believe in one God, you know, and they die. There is no God but God, you know. And
Can I ask, we're running out of time, and we're going to have a nice party upstairs. Can I ask the people who had their hands up if they just would say a word or two about their question, and then we'll let the Cardinal wrap up. Up here. If you can say it really short, we'll do the 2 or 3 hands that were up here, Caitlin, and then we'll ask the Cardinal to make a few final comments in response to those questions.
Hi, I'm Adria again. More than a question, I wanted to make a brief exhortation on how we can continue on this path. And it is trying to maintain a relationship with God, with Christ, in a daily basis, not depending on if the Catholic Church has a lot of issues or not, but having that direct relationship with God, and also trying to adhere to networks like what we are doing, maintaining those relationships and those contacts, because that's the only way that we will be able to kind of survive in a culture and in a place where the common mentality tries to define who we are, but not exactly what God has given to us as human beings to be able to pass forward. So I just wanted to exhort everyone to keep in touch and to look out there for places where they can grow in their faith, not on a dependent way, but on a way to grow and improve. Thank you.
may I just take you're right on
You're
top.
not allowed to talk yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay. There were 1 or 2 others back there.
Hi, my name is Reyes. I come from Spain. I've lived the economic crisis, which I believe that it was caused by a crisis of human values. I lost my job 2 years ago. Lots of people that I knew lost their jobs. Within these 2 years, I've developed my faith, and it's been an amazing journey. Something that I would recommend everybody is to be open-minded. I've lived with a Muslim family for 3 months in England. I've visited other Christian churches, and I think that the key is being open-minded, to share your faith with your brothers and sisters, no matter where they are coming from. And something that I really liked about what you said is that you fell down a lot, right? Me too. I always fell down, but I always stand up, and I become stronger. And I think that for me, that's the key for leadership. That together with joining together in order to be stronger all together, supporting each other. And I have to say that I really value everybody from Latin America. When I had, as I said, when I lost my job, and nobody from Spain would help me, but Latin Americans were always there for me.
Well, thank you.
And that's something that I really valued. And
Thank
with
you.
that being said, with my faith, I went back to Spain. I won the green card lottery, and here I am as a permanent resident, and I have just gotten a better job. So
All
everybody
right.
can accomplish this.
Okay, one last one there. Was there another hand? Yep.
Hi, my name is Christine Centino, and I go to the School of Continuing Studies. If we could just take it back to Pope Francis for a minute. I wondered, when Barack Obama became president, there was all this talk about a post-racial society, and everything was all great and wonderful. I wonder if Pope Francis kind of, now that he's a leader, if there's that same risk of as Latinos, we have the numbers, we have a Jesuit Latino leader. So do we run that risk of being in this kind of utopia, of false utopia? And if that's true, then what do these young leaders have to do to kind of fight that? And how do they overcome those challenges?
Okay, you can talk now.
Okay, but very, very quickly, what you say is absolutely correct. But this is why you have a church, and these things are very wonderful, but they're not going to take the place of your regular church, because that's where arm in arm and together you can sing out the praise of the Lord, and you can get your strength. The church is what should give you, each one of you, the strength, the grace to do these other meetings, to go out from there and to build up other relationships. So I think that you're right on target for that. What were the other questions?
The one about solidarity with each other, that when she lost her job,
yeah, exactly.
she found
and
her faith and her friends were helpful.
This is very clearly one of the family, quote unquote, culture of our Hispanic people. That I have my family is huge because I have so many nieces and nephews who are Hispanic, because we do this. You build on this, and so the same answer that I gave to our friend over there, that this is why you have the church to give you to give you this strength, this grace, because we believe in grace. That not only is our solidarity working together and arm, but there is God gives you grace to change the world.
And the last comment was about either buyer's remorse or will the glow move on from the excitement?
No. I think what will happen here is that Francis will make sure that we don't become a ghetto. I think Francis will make sure, because he's always going beyond the ghetto. He's always getting to the poor. He's getting to the strangers. He's getting to the people. They're never going to box him in, because he will always go to the periphery, and the periphery is where everybody is. So I think that's a perfect question for a Franciscan answer.
Two things, and then I'm going to ask Jose to close. We're going to have a nice reception upstairs. You cannot have anything to eat or drink until you fill out the questionnaire. That is the survey. We want to know what you thought of tonight, what suggestions you have for the future, who are other speakers to be, what format. It's not true that you will not be able to have anything to drink, but it would be great if you filled it out, or you can get to it online. The final thing is, join me in saying thank you to Cardinal McCarrick. He has we are all so impressed with Pope Francis, by his holiness, by his courage, by his candor, by his mercy, by his challenge, those 5-minute homilies every morning. But before there was a Pope Francis, we had a Pope Francis bishop here in Washington who loved the poor, cared for the poor, stood up for human rights, stood up for human life, and cared desperately for all of us. And so we're really grateful to you, not only for tonight, but for all the leadership you provided through the years.
Pray for me once in a while, would you? That'd be a great thing.
Thank you very much. And Jose?
Well, everyone, I really hope you enjoyed this evening. Just two things. I want to point out two more members of our executive committee, Veronica Trujillo over there, and James Jesus Cifuentes. You can talk to any one of us during the reception if you have any ideas or want to get involved. And then secondly, talking about not losing our Latin American values, I can't have our first forum not going without a little token of appreciation. Being Colombian myself, it breaks my heart people have Starbucks. So here's some Colombian cafe.
Café colombiano, muy bien.
All right.
Yeah, and finally, within our own executive committee meetings, we always have a habit of starting well through prayer and ending well through prayer. So we'd be so honored, Cardinal, if you could close our session with prayer and give us your blessing.
Okay, okay. En el nombre del Padre, Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. Señor, estamos aquí unidos en tantas maneras, unidos en una sola fe, unidos en la familia que es la iglesia, unidos, pues, casi todos nosotros, unidos en una cultura especial, vieja, pero joven en que estamos encontrando todos los días algo nuevo, otras oportunidades, otros desafíos, otras maneras en proclamar la bondad del Evangelio, proclamar el valor de ser humano, de ser cristiano, de ser católico. Señor, gracias por esos dones que nosotros hemos recibido. Gracias por todo que tú nos has dado. Fortalécenos. Denos oportunidad de estar juntos, unidos. Y así podemos cambiar el mundo. Cambiando primeramente nosotros mismos, pero últimamente cambiado el mundo. Y así nosotros, el grupo pequeño que está aquí, puede multiplicarse, no solamente en Washington, pero en todo el país, multiplicándose para ser agentes de bien, agentes de valor, agentes de gracia, agentes de felicidad, agentes que pudiéramos ser mejor en nuestras vidas, mejor en nuestras oportunidades, pero más de nada, familia de Cristo, familia de la Iglesia, familia del futuro, todo esto por Cristo nuestro Señor. Amén.
Join me in thanking Caitlin Devine, who worked with Jose and the committee and myself to make all this possible.